Hello, gang. Happy Easter. Today we celebrate the good news. The good news of Jesus' life, his death, and the resurrection. And what do we do with the good news? God calls us to do two things. Number one is to accept. Accept the good news. Several weeks back, I was reading Paul's words when he was in prison and confinement in Philippians chapter 3, verse 10. And Paul said, I want to know Christ. Yes, to know the power of his resurrection. And what Paul was talking about is really living a daily reminder of what Christ did for him. But for all of us, God calls us to make it personable, to make it a choice. So when Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane before his arrest, it talks about him being sorrowful and troubled. And it references the cup. And the cup represents all of our sin, all of our debt, all of the wrath that God will pour out on sin. Jesus knows in a very short period of time at that moment that he is going to have to drink that cup, all of it, on our behalf. A debt that we could not pay in and of ourselves, Jesus on our behalf did. So at the cross, Jesus took physical torture, psychological abuse, and the spiritual wrath from God that we all deserved. And at that cross, he died for us willingly. And 3 days later, he arose. So if the story would have ended at death, it would have been defeat. But it didn't. It finished with the resurrection of our Lord. Complete victory for all of us over sin and death through Jesus. And we should live daily in acknowledgement of that sacrifice to us. And that comes to the second point. God calls all of us to share the good news. I was reminded today as the kids did an Easter egg hunt of a story that I'd heard really a lot of years back in Leadership magazine. And it was about an 8-year-old boy named Philip. Philip had been born with Down syndrome. And he was in the 3rd grade. And often the kids were unkind. They didn't completely understand Philip. It was easy sometimes to make jokes about Philip. And there was one day in Sunday school, his teacher had brought some of the, I think it's called the legs, pantyhose containers. They're essentially a big egg like this. She gave them to each one of the kids, and their task was to go outside and put something in the egg that represented new life. And so each one of the kids were excited. They all went out. They put something in their eggs. They came back in. They all sat around the teacher, and she began to open the eggs one by one. The first egg she opened up came out a butterfly, and all the kids oohed and awed, and the teacher got a chance to talk a little bit about that for a moment, and then she went on to the next egg. The second egg she opened up, it was a flower. Again, the kids were amazed by that. They enjoyed that. She got a chance to talk about it. She got to the third egg, and she opened it up, and it was empty. One of the kids from the back said, "That's not fair. Somebody didn't do the assignment." And Philip said, "Nope, that's my egg." And someone said, "Philip, you didn't do it right." And that's when Philip really taught them a lesson. He said, "I did do it right. I left the egg empty because the tomb is empty. Jesus is alive." That day, the teacher said that Philip was fully accepted by the group. A few short months later, Philip got an infection and passed away. At his funeral, that teacher and his classmates were there. And they didn't walk down the aisle with flowers to put it on his casket. They all walked down with an empty egg, one by one, putting it on the casket to live out that story for anybody there to see that the egg is empty. Philip's story was that Jesus is alive. Our role in what God has asked us to do is to also share the gospel with anybody and everybody we can. That we share it with our words, with our life, with our love, And that's a big, tall order for all of us, but let's leave fingerprints. Let's share with the world what God has done for us. He is alive. Happy Easter.
Above all kings, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways